Welcome to episode 2. Cheers. Yesterday I shared one of my first memories I had from my very first home in my hometown in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I lived for the first 7 years of my life. I told you a story about Tarzan and my neighbor, the cabbage man. It was a beautiful place, you know, that I lived in, and the beauty of it was that it was so rich in a variety of people that lived there, you know. In this small kind of side road that you take from the main road, and you kind of, you know, there's a main road and you just turn left and you go up this little hill, mountain hill, just following this creek, this little stream of water. You end up seeing all these little houses on the left side and the right side of the creek where we lived. And then you realize that each house had a different kind of set of rules, different religion, different culture almost. Funny thing is that we were all Bosnians and Herzegovinians, but we all practiced completely different sets of rules, and we had a different outlook on the life. Even though my family, you know, has Islam and Roman Catholicism and Orthodox Christianity, Jewish background, Romani background, Albanian background, we also at some point had to kind of declare ourselves. So let's say our family became a Muslim family, whereas, you know, the family across the creek was a Roman Catholic family, even though they had Muslims in their family, but predominantly they were Roman Catholic. We were predominantly Muslim. They were predominantly Orthodox Christian. You kind of had to choose one side in order to live peacefully with everybody else. People really need to label you. They need to say, okay, this is who you are, and they expect you to be that way. Which was funny because Yugoslavs were completely mixed. Like I said, in my family there were, you know, Muslims and Roman Catholics. My grandfather, who was born a Muslim, you know, was buried a Roman Catholic. I'll tell you that story later. But nevertheless, you know, the beauty of it was in that variety, because we always celebrated something. So let's say if my family observed these Muslim holidays, and then we would, like, you know, have big party, make so many cakes and cookies, you know, and pies and other dishes, and then we would share that with neighbors, and the neighbors would come over and just stuff their faces, and then we would do the same thing. You know, we would go celebrate Roman Catholic holidays and then Orthodox Christian holidays. For example, we had 2 Christmases. We celebrated the old Christmas and the new Christmas, because Serbs celebrated the new calendar and Catholics the old calendar, or Croats. So there was parties all the time, and there was nothing more interesting to me as a child than to go visit. I loved it. You know, I would go basically to these homes, you know, visit our, you know, neighbors, and there would be cakes and food everywhere. And not just, you know, like cookies or like simple cakes. Oh my God, man, these cakes and these recipes were like hundreds of years old, passed from, you know, generation to generation, and they were rich. I mean, there is no cake in Bosnia without like 20 eggs and like half a kilogram of butter. Seriously, man. And they were so delicious. Meat everywhere. No wonder we all end up getting like heart diseases and things like that. So yeah, like, you know, we would be invited to celebrate this and that, and of course we would, you know, dress into our best clothes and go there and visit. And every time we would visit, my parents would be like, LD, we're gonna go over there, like have 1 or 2 cakes, like don't go nuts like you always do. Sure, no problem. But as soon as we get there, you know, our neighbors would be, let the kid eat, you know, my God, he's young, he likes this, he will remember this. So many kids became overweight because of these like beautiful traditions. But you know what, it was such a beautiful thing, because I just felt comfortable celebrating absolutely everything. To me, you know, celebrating a Muslim holiday or a Christian holiday was just the same. I never considered this to be mine or theirs. It was a holiday to be celebrated. We all celebrated. We loved it. There was so much respect, so much understanding. And then there was a war, which was economically motivated, and it was, you know, created in such way that we turned against each other, even though we truly respected and loved each other. It goes to show how even the best friends can be turned against each other through the use of propaganda. Psychology is a powerful tool. I saw it, and to this day I'm really scared of it. Every time I see this language being used in media, and it's being used all the time to divide us and them, you know, vaccinated, not vaccinated, or whatever, I get, you know, shivers down my spine, because I realize how dangerous this rhetoric can be. Nevertheless, so I remember, you know, in my previous video I was telling you the story about, you know, us growing up in this little, you know, house, and my neighbor who threw this cabbage head across the whole, you know, stream and hit the house at the other side of the creek. So in that house lived a Roman Catholic or a Croat family, and they were the best friends with, you know, my family. So we used to go there all the time, and I loved it because the woman there had the best freaking cakes. I loved it. The man was my father's probably best friend because he played chess. And they were relatively, you know, at the same level of, you know, skills, except he would most of the time, you know, win, because I think because they had the advantage of his home, because we lived in one room, so it was impossible for us to invite them over. So most of the time my father and I would go over to their home to play. And you know, home advantage is always a big thing. You know, if you're going on a date, you invite the girl to your place. Once she goes to your place, half the job is done. I'm only kidding, of course. But in any case, that really speaks a lot about the home advantage. I loved chess, and I still do, and I loved going there and actually observing and seeing what they're doing. I learned so much. It's amazing how you can actually like learn so much psychology, but not just the game, because even though I loved the game, I loved watching them. I loved watching my father struggle to find a way, you know, to get out of a certain situation. And I loved when he would like put him in a certain situation, and you know, you could see almost who is going to win or who is going to lose the game before they even start. It's all about this kind of attitude, you know, that you have towards the game. But there's also skills. I mean, yes, attitude is everything, but if you don't have the actual like skills, if you don't have the, you know, the talent and hard work put into it, no amount of positive attitude will get you good results. Honestly, you know, you can think that you're a rock star all you want, but if you don't know how to play the song, you're not going to be a rock star. You still have to have something to show for it. The trick to getting to this, you know, neighbor's home was to actually that we would have to cross this little stream, you know, that this little creek that was dividing us. So at night, you know, we would go just down the hill a little bit, and there was a place in which you can jump over, because only for the first 100 meters of that street, the city actually made these kind of perfect banks, you know, in which you can jump over easily. Otherwise, it was just wild nature. So we would walk down to these city-made banks and try to jump over. And some days the creek would be, you know, small. Some days the creek would be, you know, a little bit wider. And there was frogs always, especially in the summer. I saw so many frogs there, and snakes. My God. So a lot of times, you know, trying to jump over, I would not be able to jump over, and I would fall into it. You know, my foot would get wet, and then I would go over and dry it out and come back. It was so many things, and there was no light. So at night, you know, you have to come to bring the flashlight, and my father would bring the chess with him, because my neighbor, even though he was a good chess player, didn't actually have a chess, you know, set. So having a chess set was a huge thing, honestly. And since my father's chess set was this big kind of wooden chess set that was not hinged properly, it was, you had to kind of, you know, make sure you hold it well so it doesn't fall apart. Remember one evening one of us slipped. It must have been me, and all the chess pieces fell out into that creek. So there you go, there we are at night, and we didn't bring the flashlight, collecting all the pieces. My God. What a disaster. By the time we get there, both of my father and I were so angry. You know, I managed to kind of piss off my old man so many times, but he kept it together, you know, just looking, you know, the madness in his face, the disappointment, you know, it was a punishment enough, but he always kept it kind of like to himself. He was like, yes, you could have been a little bit more careful, you were not, that's okay, you know. But that silent, you know, anger I could see in his face was a punishment enough. But yeah, so we would, you know, go over there to play chess. It was such a great memory. One evening, I remember, while sleeping in this one room that we had, you know, my parents shared one bed, and I had a sofa that turned into a bed, and my sister got my crib from which I jumped as a Tarzan as a child. And one particular night, we heard some commotion, and the barn that belonged to my friends, our neighbors, somehow caught fire. Since the barn was above the house, it was really difficult to get to it, you know, and all the like men from the neighborhood went there with their buckets and set up like a line of people like passing buckets to each other, trying to put out the fire. Unsuccessfully. That went on from like 3 to 6 in the morning, and everybody went to work after that, of course. And I was there like looking at them, you know, doing all this and seeing the barn burn. But my mom was like, Eldin, go to sleep, you have school tomorrow. And I actually did. I fell asleep after like an hour or so, even with all that commotion. But the reason why I remember that is because it was that feeling, like, I, you know, remember being in that room with my parents and my sister and feeling the most safe. Like, it was the safest memory ever. I've never felt that comfortable, that well taken care of, except for that day. Like, even though like that barn across the creek, across the stream was burning down, I knew that nothing was going to happen to me, that everything was going to be okay. And it was such a beautiful feeling, just being, you know, with your family as a child and being, you know, feeling safe. Such a beautiful feeling. I think one of the most underrated feeling, just feeling safe. You know, you just feel safe, and you know that everything is going to be okay, that something or somebody is going to take care of you. Then when you grow up, you realize you have to take care of yourself, and you know, once you depend on your own safety, you're no longer all that comfortable. But you know, that's a whole different thing. You know, I think secure attachments come from that. Another memory I had was also waking up in the middle of the night to these masquerades. So what we call Halloween here, you know, when people dress up in Spider-Mans and witches and go door to door. Our families, especially Roman Catholics, would like dress up in these like really scary suits made of like wolf skin and sheep skin with horns and like crazy face masks, something that Newfoundlanders here in Newfoundland and Labrador do, and it's called mummers, you know, but really scary, really scary, much scarier than mummers. And they would just walk up and down, you know, this village and just kind of have fun, and I guess go from home to home, eat, drink, and be merry, I guess, you know. And you know what, again, same thing, cheers. Even though, you know, I remember looking out the window and seeing these scary, man, scary things, I just felt safe, you know. It was that one room like sharing with my parents and my sister, and it was just everything else. Nothing could happen. Nothing could happen to kind of do anything to me. It was one of the greatest memories of my life. This is why I loved being there in that apartment for the first 7 years of my life, because of the variety that we had around us. There were so many friends and families who supported us, and we supported them, and you could go to anybody's home and just eat and drink, and you accepted everybody. We accepted each other. That was a beautiful part. Another family that I used to visit was my friend Saado's family, where I also would go, you know, from time to time to have some of his food. I always thought that they had like somewhat simple food, you know, but it was the most tastiest things ever. Like they used to make these like breads, kind of like pita or naan breads that were like freshly baked on top of the oven, and they were so crunchy. It was amazing, with a little bit of honey. My God, man, that was good. In his place, I slept so many times as a child, of course, having sleepovers, until one night when I woke up in the middle of the day, and I woke up because of this sound, you know. I remember it clearly, even though I was just a child. There was this sound of like, you know, a foot like this, and then another sound like this. So it was like, and to this day I remember it, you know. Even this kind of like hit and then a little delay, you know, hit and then a little delay. And I kind of looked out the window and I see this man completely dressed kind of in dark clothing from a different century. He looked like a pirate. Seriously, even had that kind of pirate hat. But his face was out of this world. I really cannot describe it differently. I blocked it out in my memory because it was pretty scary, honestly. If I were to see that face again, my God, I would freak out. The whole outfit, again, he was dressed in black, and the thing is, one of his legs was actually from his knee below was a horse leg. It was a hoof, whatever the expression is in English, I forget. It was a horse leg, and he did have a leg, and he was kind of bent over in the knee, and he was using that prosthetic, which was the horse leg, which had that hoof at the bottom. And he was just passing my friend's home, going up the stairs actually, and disappearing into the mountain behind the house. our eyes met, but again I completely blocked out. He looked through the window and I saw him, and there was something that he wanted to say, but I got so scared that I just kind of covered myself and just froze, and he just continued on his way. Wow. I asked my friend and his family about this man, and they kind of avoided the whole conversation. They didn't want to talk about him. They told me something, but they really didn't want to discuss further. And to this day I don't know who the man with the horse leg was, and it was one of the scariest memories of my first 7 years in my first home back in my hometown. I hope you're following these podcasts so far like this, and I'm going to continue talking like this until we get to the present time and see how it goes from there. Love you all. Cheers. See you in the next video.